Welcome to today's podcast interview. I brought on Allan Misner. Allan, welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Allan is a health and fitness coach, and I'm going to let you provide a little bit more about your background in a moment. But the reason I brought you on is because, as I was sharing with you, I have what's called a life assessment on my website. And one of the biggest pain points I see in most people's life is wanting to be healthier, wanting to lose some weight, but yet sitting in self-sabotage. So it's like this ironic internal tug of war. So I want to get into that mindset, motivation, holistic approach to wellness and how it's affecting every part of our life. Before we do that, please give a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
Okay. Well, I live in a place called Bocas del Toro, Florida. Bocas del Toro, Florida, Panama. I used to live in Florida. We moved down here about 5 years ago, and about 3 years ago, bought a bed and breakfast, fixed it up. And my wife and I have been running the bed and breakfast. Additionally, I coach online for health and fitness for people over 40.
And the reason or how you got into that role is you hit your own rock bottom, right? You had your own health wake up call that it was time to change your life.
Yeah, I kind of lived in that space for about 8 years. But yeah, I'd made a decision. I realized I wasn't where I was supposed to be, but it kind of took a little kick in the gut from my daughter before I woke up and actually started doing the right things for myself.
Can we talk about, you said you were in that period for 8 years, and I think a lot of people are sitting in a space of, I know what I need to be doing, and I'm still not doing it. Or they justify and excuse their behaviors so that they can not take responsibility, right?
Yeah, and so that was the whole point. I was 39 and I went out to just play a volleyball game, sand volleyball. It was 6-on-6, so it should not have been that stressful on me. But I had to sub out after one game, and I was like, how did I get to this place?
Mhm.
So I kind of had this decision moment where I was like, okay, I need to do something. And then I started trying a little bit here, a little bit there, but I would maybe lose some weight and then I'd gain it all back and maybe more. And then I'd try something else and break myself and then go back. And so it was back and forth for about 8 years. And then my daughter was getting into CrossFit and these obstacle courses. She actually became a CrossFit level 1 coach. And we were talking one day and she says to me, Daddy, I want you to come watch me do this CrossFit competition. And for me, that was a kick in the gut. I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to go watch her. But I felt like I was not the father I was supposed to be because I had never seen myself as a spectator in her life. I always wanted to be a participant. And here was something that I could not do with her, even though I know just 10 years earlier, I was doing stuff like that. So it was really a kick in the teeth that I had gotten so poor in my health and fitness and everything else that, yeah, all I could do was watch. And that's not the man I wanted to be. So while I had spent 8 years of not understanding what motivates me and not understanding what I needed to do and making, yes, every excuse in the world. I travel 90%. Of course, I can't work out. How would I work out if I'm traveling all the time? How would I eat healthy if I'm traveling all the time? I was very good at my career, but that was about it. I living in toxic relationships. My health was declining. I was way overweight. My fitness was gone. Um, and so I made that commitment of, okay, I am going to be a participant and I'm going to show my daughter the man I'm supposed to be. And so I got us to sign up for a Tough Mudder, which is a 12 to 13 mile mud run. So it's not like running on concrete like a half marathon. This is muddy. This is hills and mud, and it's not an easy run. And they just happen to throw in about 25 obstacles just to make it a little bit more exciting.
Yeah.
I had no business signing up for this. I was well over 66 pounds overweight and just not fit. So I knew I needed to do something. I had committed myself to doing this thing. I did not want to slow my daughter down. I did not want her to feel like she just needed to go ahead and leave me back there. So I started doing the things I needed to do. I knew I couldn't hire a personal trainer because I'm traveling. That's an excuse. So how do I get past that excuse? Well, I became a personal trainer. I got the certification that a personal trainer would have, and that gave me some insight into what I needed physically. So I got a corrective exercise specialty because I had problems with my movement. I needed some corrective exercise to get myself where I needed to be. I got the fitness nutrition because I knew my nutrition wasn't quite right. I scheduled a consult with a dietitian, had a 1 hour conversation with her. I'm like, she started talking about a certain way of eating. I'm like, okay, I'll look into that. And I started studying everything I could about it. And I started eating more and more that way. How do I go to a location and eat that way? So I'm researching menus. I'm making sure that the hotels I'm going to stay in have a good fitness gym. If they don't, is there one close by I can do? So I started doing the things that I had never done to become the man I was supposed to be. And I'm happy to say, yes, 8 months later in November, I got off the plane. My daughter got off her plane. I was waiting for her outside. I walk out and she says, Daddy, you got skinny. It wasn't so much skinny, but I had changed. It was obvious that I changed because I'd lost 66 pounds of fat. I'd put on 11 pounds of muscle. So I was a different person. I had gotten away from the bottom and I was back to being more like I should be. We finished the Tough Mudder and we finished it holding hands together.
Right.
And that's, I would say, the three most special moments I've ever had with my daughter. When she was born, she grabbed my pinky with her hand, little hand, wrapped around my pinky. Um, when I walked her across the aisle a little over a year ago, I'm 100% certain that if I had not done what I did when I was 45, that at 56, I would not have been doing that. And then, yeah, holding her hand, crossing the finish line at a Tough Mudder. Um, so it's those moments now that when I look forward, that compel me to say, no, there's no going back. That was my past. My future is so much better.
I think what you just shared, I want to highlight a few golden nuggets. So wherever anybody's at in their life, and it might not be health, it could be your finances, it could be your relationships, but what you really honed in on is you had a wake-up call and you started making new choices, new behaviors, self-education, you had a why. But here's what I really want to deep dive because I think a lot of health and fitness focuses so much on the body, like the surface level stuff. How important is the mental and emotional aspect of health and fitness?
Well, what I've found with my coaching is that the mental is all of it.
Yeah,
So movement, what eating and all that, that just comes naturally once you've done the mindset stuff.
right.
I had a client, and I used to ask this of my clients was, do you love yourself enough to change? And I stopped asking the question because the answers were they were quite devastating.
Yeah.
But when it works, when you get working with someone, then they start to acknowledge that this is their relationship with themselves that's the biggest saboteur in this whole thing. Well, now you have something to work with. And so, like, I had one client, and we were talking a lot about self-love. We were talking about her relationship with herself, and that she needed to move more. And so she committed that she was going to walk for at least 30 minutes every day. Now, I warned her that every day might not happen, and that doesn't mean that she failed. So we were working through that. But I told her, because I knew a lot about her at this point, I said, you're someone who needs traction. I call it tires when I do my evaluation, but you need traction. And so to get traction, you need to streak. You need to see consistency happen in front of you. So I encouraged her to get a calendar, a paper calendar. And I said, okay, each day that you do that thing, the 30-minute walk or whatever it is that you decide is right for you, I want you to put a mark on that calendar. Well, she was so astute with what she needed. She went out and bought heart stickers because she acknowledged when we said that was each and every day she walks, that's self-love. That's an expression of self-love. Each and every day she's able to get out and go for that walk. And so she went through the month and she's putting a sticker on every day. And then she gets to the end of the month and she has this just huge expression of self-love in front of herself that it just drove change like you've never seen. And so, yes, for her, her mindset was she wasn't expressing self-love, and the messaging and everything else was basically breaking every other part of her. So she wasn't eating right, she wasn't moving right. But once she realized that that was the key, she was doing it every day.
Even on that, it's like you're building self-trust, you're building follow-through, you're building consistency. I hone on that a lot with my coaching clients. I primarily work with very successful business owners, but not mentally, relationally, and whatever. They don't celebrate their wins. And I try to celebrate all the little things. And kind of like what you were sharing, I have a daily accountability tracker my tech team helped build for my clients. And I do it too. And I'm human. There are days where I didn't do all my things, but I'm at least still taking inventory, and like I give myself a little bit of grace, but get back on tomorrow, right? How easy is it for people to say, I'll start Monday, I'll start next week, and then all of a sudden years have gone down the road.
Right. Well, that's a self-awareness thing. Within the model of what I built, it was the mindsets, 5 mindsets, and just understanding your mindset. For some women, they're what I call co-pilots, and basically they've got all the obligations of everybody around them, so they feel like they don't have time to take care of themselves.
Mm.
And I was initially what I would call windshield. I was sitting there looking in the rearview mirror of the guy I used to be and not doing the things I needed to do based on who I was today, and looking out of the windshield. And once I started looking forward, everything and more falling in place.
Yeah.
And then today I would call myself an atlas. And so an atlas being the paper atlas. And when we were kids, you would take a felt pin, usually red, and you draw the route for the trip that you were going to take. And this is how, so everybody in there could know kind of how we're going on our trip. I needed a destination. I needed something big and scary in front of me to drive me to keep performing. So I might miss a workout, but I'd be darn sure that, okay, because I know where I'm going, I can't miss 2 or 3. I can't just say I'll restart. Today's Thursday. I can't just say I'll restart on Monday and
Right.
then blow the weekend off, because that's not how an atlas is wired. We're wired to compete, even sometimes with ourselves, or the scary future that we have if we don't do what we're supposed to do. And so that's why the Tough Mudder ended up being like such a pivotal point, because for me, that was the driver. As I mentioned with my client, she was a tires, she needed traction. And then the fifth one is someone who wants to try everything. So they'll try a diet for 3 weeks and they're like, oh, I only lost 1 pound, 2 pounds. So then they're like, I'll try something else. And then a friend tells them about, well, such and such is taking this or doing that. And so they hit the brake, hit the gas. So they're pedals. They're never hitting the gas and just sticking with it. They keep trying new things and stopping, start and stop and stop and start. And so there's these different ways that we are going to look at a problem, which is us, and we're going to make decisions, and finding the way that works best for us at the moment is that mindset. Once you get past that, no, what's my superpower as an atlas? Well, the superpower as an atlas is to have a big, audacious goal. The superpower for someone who's a tires is the consistency, physically seeing consistency. The superpower for the mom who finds herself the co-pilot, taking care of everybody else but herself, doesn't realize she has a whole team of people around her that want her to be successful and will help her if she just asks for help.
Mm.
And so knowing these mindsets then gives you the cheat codes, if you will, for how you can get past yourself, if you just understand that the way you structure this can be just as important as wanting it.
All right, so there's a few directions I want to go in from here. I have like 3 main topics, but the first one is what you just touched on, is the importance of having a clear aim. Again, in the work that I do, what I see it come across is a lot of people don't have goals, short term or long term. They're kind of flailing their way through life, living in survival mode, aka autopilot. So if somebody finds themselves in that space, no direction, no aim, no vision, they've been sitting in this funk for years, how do they get started creating a vision?
Well, that's the word. That's exactly the word, is vision. Vision is some people will kind of call it the end goal, but it's an aspirational place, and it can be different. So, my vision when I was 45 was to be able to complete that Tough Mudder with my daughter. And as a result, I set little goals, which I call mile markers. So I'm going somewhere. I want to see the mile markers going by. That's how I'm going to know that I'm moving forward. Like keep getting those little goals done. Little win, little win, little win. I just want 3 workouts this week. I want to make sure that I'm eating mostly this. I'm drinking enough water. I'm doing these things. I'm sleeping 8 hours. Those little mile markers that just keep going by, telling you that you're moving forward. You need that. But when you reach that goal, it's not over. You need to change your vision. And so what I look at it now is I say, I want to be capable for the rest of my life. And I call it the term I use, I call fit for task. And so things I needed to be able to do in my late 40s, I was able to do. But, I'm not going to have to do that when I'm in my 90s. But this whole story, my grandfather loved golf. I mean, like loved it. He lived on a golf course. He played golf practically every day until he was 80. I went to visit him and we're sitting there in the golf cart. And this was normally the part when we're doing the visitation with family that he would pull over and I would get out and he would go off and play golf with the guys. And he wasn't driving off with them. So I'm like, what's going on? He says, well, I can't play anymore. My balance is gone. I can't swing the club. So I asked him, I said, do you want to just go to the driving range and we'll take a few swings and we'll work on your balance? He's like, no, I'm done.
Mm.
So a lot of people say, oh, well, he's 80, okay, he's losing things when he's 80. He lived till he was 95.
Wow.
Last 15 years of his life, he couldn't do the thing he loved the most.
Mm.
Okay, now flash forward 10 years. I'm still coming to visit every year. And this year he won't see me. He won't let me come over to his apartment. He won't let me see him. And what had happened was he had gotten to a point where he couldn't physically make it to the bathroom in time. And then he couldn't clean himself up after. And he didn't want people in his apartment. And he didn't want that to actually happen when he was around people.
Yeah.
Okay. He lived the last 5 years of his life that way. Okay. So when I talk about vision, realize it's not always the Tough Mudders. Sometimes it's just being capable of taking care of my wife if something were to happen to her, picking her up and getting her in the car and getting her where she needs to be. Because we have an ambulance service, but I'm going to be able to get her there in the car faster than the ambulance would. But being able to physically do that and help her, it's going to be being independent myself. So I can take care of myself and be able to wipe my own butt when I'm 105. It's funny, but it's real. And people are living that way. And I don't want to. I don't want to be a burden. I want to be independent. I want to take care of myself. So a vision isn't always this big, huge aspirational thing. Sometimes it's just about living the whole life that you were intended to live. My wife and I are going to Italy and Greece. And so we're looking at, what's physically involved in doing some of those things. We want to enjoy it. So if your bucket list is, oh, I want to go to Greece, I want to do that. Well, there's a good bit of walking, a good bit of hills. So you got to be in a physical condition to do it. So are you keeping yourself close enough that you can just do those things and enjoy the things that you want out of life? Or are you going to be someone who can't and has to ride the donkey up the hill?
Yeah. Here's the next thing I want to ask you about. Ultimately, it's creating like that sustainable lifestyle. And I would imagine, have you heard of 75 hard?
Yes, I have.
For those, if you haven't, Andy Frisella created 75 Hard. This was years ago. It was so big. I, of course, had to experience it because I love endurance things and mindset. And it took me 3 attempts, but I'm not a quitter and I had to finish that damn thing. But 75 Hard is for 75 days straight. And if you mess up, you miss one of these 5 things, you got to start back at square one, day one. That's why it took me 3 times. But the 5 things are drink a gallon of water a day, 2 workouts, 45 minutes each. One must be outdoors, sticking to whatever diet you set up, no alcohol, reading 10 pages a day, and taking a progress pic. Those 5 things. Now, here's what I loved about 75 Hard. I think something like that, it took a lot of discipline. It took planning. I had to map it out. I had a daily checklist, consistency, but something like that, in my opinion, not sustainable. It was aggressive. It was a huge time commitment. And I think that's why so many people yo-yo and fall off track because they try to take on too many things. So I want to ask you, Mr. Fitness Coach, What can people do to create a sustainable, long-lasting, healthier, happier, fitter life?
You're right. That is a short term. Now, he hit on a lot of major points, like an atlas like me, and I think like you, the way you're talking, I think you might be an atlas too. You like having that scary thing in front of you. You like to be challenged. And so
Yeah.
that high challenge, the making it 75 days was a high motivator for you. Beyond that, there's people with consistency. If you can do this for 75 days, then you've accomplished something massive. So there's a lot of little bits in there that I think, yes, absolutely are good for the right people. But physically, are you capable of doing those things and keep doing them consistently? Probably not. So the way I like to approach it is I want you to think about there are three cars. Okay. One of them is a sports car. We'll just call it a Ferrari. Okay. And the Ferrari can just haul it. If the road's clear and there's no bumps, no potholes, no detours, it's great. You're hauling it down the highway as fast as you want to drive. And so you can get places quickly. And at the time you probably signed up to do something like that, you felt like, okay, I can be in a Ferrari for 75 days. I can do this. Okay. And that's great. But sometimes you got to carry baggage with you. You got other things going on, and getting 2 workouts a day and drinking a whole gallon of water every day. Well, maybe that's not in the cards for you. So you're gonna get a pickup truck, and you're going to drive a little slower. You can't go quite as fast as the Ferrari. But if you come up on potholes and speed bumps and detours, you're going to be much better equipped to keep moving forward.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes we have more. We've got kids and family and all this stuff and the packs and the diapers and everything else. So we're going to have to go a little bit slower, and we're going to have to be a little bit more careful, and we're going to be in a minivan.
Yeah.
Okay. And all of those are traveling at different speeds at different times. Again, if I'm in the minivan, I can't expect to keep up with the Ferrari. It's just not going to happen. So the point is, and what the key is you have the keys to all three. So you can choose the vehicle that's right for you at the right time. There are times when you should be going faster, and sticking around in the minivan is just wasting your time. You could be going faster. You're letting things get in the way. And if you make sure that you're in the fastest, most appropriate vehicle, because if you get in the Ferrari and there are a whole bunch of potholes and detours, you're not gonna do well, and your expectations are going to be wrong. So getting in the fastest vehicle that makes the most sense for what you're dealing with in your life today is key. And then you reverse engineer it and you go backwards and you say, okay, I have to be in the minivan today for the next 3 weeks. I have to be in the minivan because we're dealing with this, we're dealing with that. I got this and them. So I know I'm going to go slower, but I can set my expectations to know that, yes, I'm moving slower, but that's okay. I'm still moving forward. I'm still getting some workouts in. I'm still eating reasonably well. I'm still getting reasonable amount of sleep. I'm doing the things I can do with what I have to get where I want to go. But as soon as the road opens up, you get in the better vehicle and you go faster. But you'll know why you're in the vehicle you're in, and you'll be going the speed that's the right speed for you. And you can feel confident and comfortable that you're doing all you can under the circumstances and living the life that you need to live. And so, again, the key of this is to recognize that you have the keys to all three.
Yeah.
You just have to choose the right vehicle for you and move forward. They're all moving forward, and you just have to make sure you're in the right one.
But what happens for those that just get real comfortable in the minivan lifestyle? Slow and steady, this will do.
Okay. Well, if that's where you are, then I totally get that. There's nothing inherently wrong with you choosing the speed with which you move. The one issue, and again, this is just I deal with people over 40. We do have some things that are happening, like sarcopenia and osteopenia. Our bodies are naturally wanting to shed some muscle and shed some bone density. And so if we try to coast through the aging curve, we will age faster. Versus when I can make sprints, when I can go faster, I can retain or even build muscle. You can build bone density. If you're doing the right resistance training, you can effectively slow or stop aging from a physical perspective. If you're eating well, you're giving your body the healthy food it needs, it's going to rebuild and do the things it needs to do to stay healthy. If you're getting the sleep that you need and you're managing your stress, your hormones are going to be much better balanced than they may be otherwise. So I would never encourage anyone to coast on the aging curve because it's not the best road to be on.
Yeah.
You can make better choices. And so again, if you know you should be in the pickup and you're not, then you've got to find a way to motivate yourself to do the right things. And so that's one final other thing I wanted to talk about. So with motivation, I think most of us think this is a special little force that just shows up. So I'm going to start my program on Monday the 1st. And so you're going to start. And maybe you do go in with a whole bunch of motivation, but by 3 weeks later, it's like motivation left. Oh, I'll just wait till it shows up again because
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's magical force that just shows up, right? Well, no, that's actually wrong. The right way to be motivated is you have to do something first. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you think about what motivation really is, it's two things. It's accountability. Accountability can get us motivated. And on the other side, self-efficacy can get us motivated. And so I'll talk through those. So there's two layers in each one. And one of them is the what I call the leader layer, and the other is the social layer. So within the accountability, you have the leader, which is basically your coach or a leader in the business. So basically, I'll say, okay, coach, because I'm a coach. People hire me to help keep them accountable. Okay, you're going to do your workouts this week? Yes, coach, I'm going to do my workouts. Okay, I want to see it. And then we can check in next week. Did you do your workouts? Yes, coach, I did my workouts. Okay, that's accountability. And so it's the easiest one to get, but you do have to do something. You have to hire someone, or hire me to hold you accountable. Another type of accountability is down in the social area. And this is where you kind of join a group. So maybe it's a spin class or a Zumba class, or you're going to go do water aerobics with friends or take up a sport like tennis or running. And so at that point, yes, you know they're there. So that holds you accountable to show up.
Mhm.
But again, you have to do something first. You have to join the group. And that keeps you motivated. I know Sally and Sue are going to be there, so I'm going to be there. Okay, that's accountability. Now, over on the self-efficacy, the first level is self-management. That's a leader, that's self-management. And in that model, basically, what do I know? Well, I know if I don't pack my gym bag the night before, I have a tendency to skip my workout at lunchtime because I'll forget a sock or a shoe or a t-shirt or something. And then I talk myself out of the workout. So I need strategies and tactics in place that make sure I have no compelling reason to not do it. So self-management's where if you set the alarm and then you don't hit the snooze, that's self-management. And that's a level of self-efficacy as a leader and CEO of your own body, your own self. Okay. That's harder. It takes the planning and the dedication to sit down and say, I'm going to do these things, so I'll do the thing. I don't want to forget my gym bag. I don't want to not pack it properly. I want to make sure it's there packed so I get rid of an excuse that I've used in the past. So you learn from your past what you did and you change it. That's action. That's doing something first. And then you make it easier and easier. You make the resistance to doing it slicker and slicker. And as a result, you're more likely to do it. And then you do it more. And then just learn more when you don't do it. And you just keep trying to do more. That's self-management in the self-efficacy part of the motivation. Now, the fourth one is the self-efficacy in the social perspective. And this is the most powerful one, but of course it does take the most effort. And this is where you have values and habits that align with who you want to be.
Mm.
Okay. And so the way I like to think about that is it becomes your identity. So you think about someone who started and they said, I want to start walking. And so they get a friend to walk with them. And so that's their accountability. So their friend is the part of the social accountability. And they're doing their walks all the time. And then they decide, we're going to throw in a jog. So now it's a jog and a walk. And then they decide, hey, I'm going to try a 5K. And so they get ready for the 5K. They do the 5K and they enjoy it. So they sign up for another one. And now they refer to themselves as a runner. And what do runners do? They run. So When they wake up in the morning and you see them running at 6 o'clock in the morning before they're ready going to work, it really isn't surprising. They didn't need any extra motivation because they had made the motivation themselves. So the self-efficacy at that level is just deep-seated. Runners run, CrossFitters CrossFit. If you eat a certain way and you identify that way, you do it. You just do the thing. And so now it's ingrained in you. It's your identity. Your habits and values are built around it. And so those four quadrants of what I developed as this motivation map
Yeah.
are really just a way for you to have motivation. You're not waiting for it. You're making it happen by doing the things that you're doing.
I'm really glad you touched on that very last piece because motivation, I think so many people find themselves being extrinsically motivated, waiting for external forces to keep them in line. But the very last piece you shared on that quadrant, identity, when you have the identity, that's why you won't procrastinate, or you'll catch self-doubt and replace it with belief or confidence. That's how we keep showing up for ourselves, is creating that identity of the healthier, fitter version, or the more successful or thriving relationships, right?
And you won't feel good
Yeah.
not doing it because it's not authentic.
Yeah.
You hurt your foot. If a runner hurts their foot and can't run, they're miserable. And so it's just that concept of saying, okay, extrinsic can be fine to start. I'm going to hire a coach. I'm going to join a group. That's extrinsic, but it
Yeah.
is the intrinsic, the internal stuff that's the most powerful. And so, yes, if I'm setting up the strategies and tactics and I'm saying, no, you're not hitting snooze, you're getting up. There is no snooze on this alarm because I'm on my phone. Apparently, I can choose if I want a snooze alarm, and I don't actually use the alarm anymore because I go to bed early enough that I'm already awake when it's time for me to be awake. But all that said, when you get down to the point where you identify that it took a lot of work to get here, but when you do, you will actually feel bad not doing the thing that aligns with your habits and values.
I have to share this real quick because this is so timely. Earlier this week, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. He had an off day, low energy, and he's like, so I just procrastinated. Now, his end goal, now we're talking about clear aims and whatever, his end goal is to consistently hit those six-figure marks. So all I said was two things. One, give yourself grace. It's okay to fall off, but get back on. Two, 100,000 version doesn't procrastinate. And he was like, oh, damn, thanks for that reminder. So that's why the
Right.
identity piece is so, so important.
Yeah. And that's how motivation works. If you sit
Yeah.
back and wait, well, he's not going to hit his six figures because it didn't show. It didn't show up on Monday. It's not definitely not going to show up on Tuesday. Wednesday rolls around and well, I'll just go golfing and 100,000 goes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it's the same way with health and fitness. It's the same way with every major thing that you want in your life. If you wait for motivation to show up, it won't, and it
Yeah.
won't stick around.
Here's a question for you because I feel like we touched on a lot of valuable pieces in today's conversation. What do you believe is one key takeaway you want listeners to get?
You are in control of you. If you can push yourself into that part of motivation, we talked about self-efficacy, that's when everything happens. And that will take you understanding yourself. So know what makes you tick, know what's going to keep you moving forward. And it will take a level of self-love to make sure that you're doing the kindest and most beautiful thing for yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. You can hire a coach and yeah, I'll care. I will definitely care about your outcomes.
Yeah.
When you stop paying me, I have to stop caring as much and move on because again, you haven't hired your coach. So there are ways around it, but in the end, if you don't care, it won't happen.
Fair enough. Here's what I want to do to wrap up the interview. I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Right.
What is a quote or motto that you live by?
It's a Japanese proverb, and it's wait, plan without action is I'll butcher this, but thought without action is a daydream. action without thought is a nightmare. And the basic principle is if you're just thinking about doing something and not doing it, you're not going to go very far because you're just daydreaming. If you go out and just start trying to do things because you think they're the right thing to do, but you really haven't aligned yourself with where you want to go, with what your vision is, then you have no idea. You're probably climbing up the wrong ladder and going to be on the wrong wall.
Yeah, that's a great one. Thank you for sharing. What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend?
I am, I read a lot of different books. I read a health and fitness book about every week, and I read at least 2 personal development or business development books. So if you're in the business development space, particularly if you have to sell anything, Jeb Blunt pretty much writes all my favorite books right now in the sales segment, and his book Fanatical Prospecting is brilliant. So I'd encourage anyone who has to find their own clients and sell anything to look up Jeb Blunt and look at his what did I say?
Fanatical Process.
Fanatical Prospecting. Yeah, the book I actually just got to start reading is his. You can it's fuzzy, but basically it's objections. So as a part of the sales process, I'm a self-selling person. I have to take care of selling my own business stuff, my own consulting, my own coaching. So yeah, anything I can get my hands on that's going to help me convey to a potential client why they need to work with me, I'm on it.
Final question. What advice would you give your younger self?
Never act out of fear.
Mm.
Everything I've ever done that was wrong was when I reacted to fear and made a decision because I was afraid to do the harder thing.
Such a great note to end on. Allan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I appreciated this. Thank you.